Easter brunch at Aunt Diane's house was always an elaborate production. Her suburban colonial sparkled with spring decorations, pastel flowers in crystal vases, a ham centerpiece that probably cost $200, designer place settings for 18 family members. She loved hosting these gatherings, loved being the matriarch who brought everyone together. She especially loved reminding everyone of her success. I arrived in my 7-year-old Toyota Corolla, parking on the street behind my cousin Tyler's Range Rover. My floral dress was from Target's spring collection. Pretty enough, affordable, and exactly the kind of thing that made my family assume I was struggling. Nicole. Aunt Diane greeted me at the door, her smile tightening as she took in my appearance. How's the little apartment in Riverside? It's good, Aunt Diane. Thanks for having me. Of course, dear. Family is family. She lowered her voice. Though I do wish you'd let us help you find something better. That neighborhood has gotten so questionable. I like Riverside. Well, you're young. You don't understand property values yet. She ushered me inside. Come say hello to everyone. Tyler just bought another investment property, his third this year. Inside, the family had gathered in their usual hierarchies. Uncle Paul discussing stock portfolios with my father. Tyler holding court about real estate investments. My mother trapped in conversation with Diane about European vacation plans. My younger sister Emma spotted me and waved sympathetically. At 28, she was the only family member who didn't treat me like a charity case. Nicole. Tyler appeared, all smiles and expensive cologne. Still renting that studio in Riverside? I could help you find something to buy. First-time buyer programs, get you building equity instead of throwing money away on rent. I'm fine, Tyler. Thanks. Are you though? Aunt Diane rejoined the conversation. You're 34, unmarried, renting in a questionable area. Don't you want stability? Security? I have both actually. Do you? Working freelance for that. What do you call it? Property consulting. He said it like I'd claimed to be a fortune teller. That's not real stability, dear. Tyler jumped in. I keep telling you, Nicole, real estate is where the money is. I've got 3 rental properties now, pulling in almost $6,000 a month in passive income. That's how you build wealth. 3 properties? That's impressive, Tyler. I kept my voice neutral. It's all about thinking big, taking risks, not settling for some tiny apartment because you're afraid to commit. He gestured around Diane's house. Look at Mom and Uncle Paul. They own this place outright plus that investment condo downtown. That's smart money management. Aunt Diane beamed. We've always believed in property ownership. It's how you build generational wealth. I sipped my mimosa and said nothing. Brunch was served. Quiche and smoked salmon, fresh fruit and pastries, bottomless mimosas. The conversation flowed around me, family members sharing updates on careers and achievements. Tyler talked about his latest rental property acquisition. My cousin Sarah discussed her promotion to senior manager. Even Emma, bless her, shared news about her graphic design business landing a major client. When the conversation turned to me, the questions were perfunctory, tinged with pity. Still doing that property consulting work? Uncle Paul asked. Yes. Keeping busy. Any interesting projects? A few things in development. Well, good for you. Staying active. He turned to Tyler. Now, about that downtown condo opportunity you mentioned. After brunch, we moved to the living room for coffee and dessert. That's when Aunt Diane decided to make her announcement. She tapped her coffee cup with a spoon, drawing everyone's attention. I want to share some news that affects our family, she began, her voice taking on that important tone she used for pronouncements. Particularly our dear Nicole. My stomach tightened. As you all know, Paul and I have been building our real estate portfolio. We believe in property ownership as a path to security and wealth. She smiled at me and it wasn't kind. Which is why we've been concerned about Nicole's living situation. Diane, my mother started. No, Melissa, this needs to be said. Nicole has been renting that little studio in Riverside for years. Throwing away money on rent when she could be building equity. Well, Paul and I have decided to help. Uncle Paul nodded. We've purchased the building Nicole lives in. Closed on it 2 weeks ago. It's an investment property for us, but it also gives us an opportunity to help family. The room went quiet. We're going to evict the current tenants, including Nicole, and renovate the units, Diane continued. Turn them into luxury apartments we can rent for proper market rate. Nicole, you have 30 days to vacate our investment property. I set down my coffee cup carefully. We've already contacted a moving company that can help you, Diane added. Very affordable rates. We'll even pay for the first hour of labor. Consider it our Easter gift. Tyler was nodding approvingly. Smart move, Mom. That building has great bones. Once you renovate, you can probably get $1,500 per unit instead of the current $800. Exactly, Uncle Paul agreed. The neighborhood is gentrifying. Perfect timing to upgrade and capitalize. My mother looked stricken. Diane, you're evicting your own niece? We're helping her, Melissa. This will force Nicole to finally buy something instead of wasting money on rent. Sometimes tough love is the kindest approach. Where is she supposed to go? Emma demanded. There are plenty of apartments available. Nicole is a grown woman, she can figure it out. Diane turned to me with that practiced sympathy. Dear, I know this seems harsh, but you'll thank us eventually. This is the push you need to get serious about your financial future. I pulled out my phone and opened my property management app. The one connected to Riverside Property Group, the LLC I'd created 9 years ago specifically for real estate investments. Aunt Diane, I said calmly, what's the address of the building you purchased? Why does that matter? Humor me. She exchanged glances with Uncle Paul. 742 Riverside Avenue. We closed 2 weeks ago for $375,000. Cash purchase. I navigated to my property database. Found the building at 742 Riverside Avenue. Opened the ownership records. That's interesting, I said quietly. Because according to county records, 742 Riverside Avenue is owned by Riverside Property Group, LLC. Has been since 2016. I'm looking at the deed right now. Tyler grabbed my phone. That's impossible. My parents just bought that building. Your parents bought 752 Riverside Avenue, I corrected. Different building. Same street. The room went silent. But the realtor said, Uncle Paul pulled out his phone, scrolling frantically through emails. His face went white. Oh God. It is 752. So you didn't buy Nicole's building? My mother asked. No, we bought the building next door. Diane was looking at me strangely now. But how do you have access to property records for? Because I own 742 Riverside Avenue. I pulled up the full ownership documentation. I purchased it in 2016 for $290,000. 12 units, all occupied, generating about $11,000 in monthly rental income. Tyler's mouth fell open. I also own 738 Riverside Avenue, I continued, pulling up more records. That's a 16-unit building I acquired in 2018. And 721 Riverside Avenue, 8 units, purchased in 2020. Plus properties on 4th Street, Maple Avenue and Harbor Boulevard. How many properties? My father asked quietly. I own 23 residential buildings in the Riverside and downtown areas. Total portfolio value is approximately $14.6 million. Annual rental income last year was just over $1.2 million. Aunt Diane had gone completely pale. The property consulting I do? I looked around the room. I consult on my own properties. Property management, tenant relations, renovation planning. That's my full-time job, managing my real estate portfolio. But you drive a Toyota, Tyler stammered. You live in a studio apartment. I drive a paid-off car with excellent gas mileage. And I live in a studio because it's part of my property portfolio and I like being on-site to handle tenant issues quickly. I pulled up another screen. The studio I live in. I designated it as owner-occupied in my LLC. I don't pay myself rent. $14 million, Uncle Paul whispered. In property value, yes. My equity position is about $9.3 million after mortgages. Though I've been paying those down aggressively. Emma started laughing. Oh my God. This is perfect. What about the eviction notice? My mother asked. I turned to Aunt Diane. You said you're evicting tenants from your building at 752 Riverside? She nodded mutely. That building has 18 units. You purchased it for $375,000, which means you probably got a deal because it needs work. I pulled up the property records for 752. Looking at the previous owner. Interesting. That was a distressed sale. The building has significant deferred maintenance, plumbing issues, electrical problems, foundation concerns. The inspector mentioned some repairs needed, Uncle Paul admitted. Some repairs. That building needs about $200,000 in renovations to be safely habitable at luxury rates. You'll need to evict all tenants, which will take months and probably involve legal battles. Then you'll need permits, contractors, financing for the renovation costs. Tyler was scrolling through his phone frantically. Mom, Dad, why didn't you tell me about this purchase? I could have. We wanted to surprise the family, Diane said weakly. You surprised us all right. I looked at my aunt. Here's what's actually happening with your building. The tenants at 752 Riverside have been organized by a tenant advocacy group. They're fighting the evictions. You're looking at a legal battle that could last a year. How do you know that? Uncle Paul demanded. Because I know the neighborhood. I know the advocacy groups. I know which buildings are good investments and which are money pits. I met his eyes. 752 Riverside is a money pit. The previous owner couldn't afford the repairs and sold at a loss. You overpaid by about $75,000. His face went from white to red. As for the eviction notice I received, I said, turning back to Diane, I didn't receive one. You don't own my building. You can't evict me from property I own. But you said, Diane started. I said you were evicting current tenants. I am a current tenant at 742 Riverside. I'm just also the landlord. I pulled up my email. Though interestingly, I did send an eviction notice this week. To the tenant in Unit 4B at 721 Riverside Avenue. Tyler's eyes went wide. That's my rental property. I live in 4B. You rent 4B. From me. You've been my tenant for 2 years, Tyler. I showed him the lease. Riverside Property Group owns that building. You pay me $950 a month. That's impossible. My landlord is some property management company. Riverside Property Management. That's my company. I manage my own properties. I pulled up his rental history. You've been a decent tenant, actually. Rent always on time, no complaints. But you violated the lease terms last month. How? You subleased the spare bedroom on Airbnb without permission. That's grounds for eviction. His face went completely white. The eviction notice went out Tuesday, I continued. You have 30 days to vacate my investment property. The silence in the room was absolute. You're evicting your own cousin? Diane's voice was shrill. I'm enforcing my lease terms. Just like you planned to evict me, except I actually have the legal authority to do it. Nicole, please, Tyler started. Here's what's going to happen, I said, closing my phone. Tyler, you can stay in 4B if you agree to updated lease terms. No subletting, no exceptions. And your rent is increasing to market rate, $1,200 per month. That's a 25% increase. That's the current rate for comparable units in that neighborhood. I've been undercharging you because you're family. He sank into his chair. As for Aunt Diane and Uncle Paul, I continued, you're welcome to proceed with your renovation plans for 752 Riverside. But you should know that the tenant advocacy group is very effective. The repairs will cost more than you budgeted, and the neighborhood rental market is about to shift. Shift how? Uncle Paul asked nervously. I'm renovating 3 of my buildings this year and upgrading to compete in the luxury market. That will put downward pressure on surrounding properties. Your units at 752 won't command the premium rates you're expecting. Diane looked like she might cry. You're sabotaging our investment? I'm managing my portfolio strategically. That's what real estate investors do. I softened slightly. But I'm not cruel. If you want guidance on the renovation, I'm happy to share my contractor recommendations and help you navigate the permit process. Family discount on consulting fees. You'd help us. Uncle Paul sounded shocked. Your family. You made a bad investment because you didn't do proper due diligence. I can help you minimize the damage. I looked at Diane. But first, you need to apologize for trying to evict me from property you didn't own and for spending years assuming I was failing just because I live modestly. Diane's perfect composure crumbled. Nicole, I'm so sorry. Thought I was helping. I thought you needed guidance. You thought I was beneath you. That's different from wanting to help. You're right. I've been awful. Tears streaked her makeup. Can you forgive me? Eventually. Right now, I need you to understand that success doesn't always look like Range Rovers and designer handbags. Sometimes it looks like a paid-off Toyota and a property portfolio worth $14 million. Emma was openly grinning now. This is the best Easter ever. My father spoke up. Nicole, why didn't you tell us? About the properties, the success, all of it. Would you have believed me? Or would you have assumed I was exaggerating like you always do when I try to talk about my work? He looked ashamed. We should have asked more questions. Actually listened. Yes, you should have. I stood up. Thank you for brunch, Aunt Diane. It was enlightening. You're leaving? My mother asked. I have a property inspection at 3. One of my 4th Street buildings needs a new roof. Can I come? Emma asked eagerly. I'd love to see how you run your business. I smiled. Sure. I'll show you everything. As we walked to my modest Toyota, Emma laughed. The look on Tyler's face when you told him you were his landlord, priceless. He's been bragging about his 3 rental properties for months. He didn't realize one of them was mine. Are you really going to evict him? No. He's actually a good tenant when he follows the rules. But he needed to understand there are consequences. My phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Paul. Asterisk, can we talk tomorrow? About renovation consulting? We're in over our heads. Asterisk. I replied. Asterisk, Tuesday at 2 p.m. My office. We'll discuss your options. Asterisk. Emma read over my shoulder. You have an office? Suite 400 at the Riverside Commerce Building. I own that too. Bought it in 2019. I grinned. Want to see it? Absolutely. As we drove past the buildings I owned, past the properties I'd carefully acquired and managed, I thought about family and assumptions and the sweet satisfaction of proving yourself on your own terms. My aunt had tried to evict me from property she didn't own. Instead, she discovered I was her nephew's landlord and a real estate investor who'd built something she could only dream of. And honestly, the eviction notice Tyler received was just the beginning of his education. Some lessons are best learned through experience.
I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. I was escorted out of the house 2 weeks before it. They didn't yell. They didn't explain. They just told me I had crossed a line, that I was no longer welcome. I was 22. Quiet, careful, the kind of daughter who never missed a curfew and always offered to do the dishes. My sister Rachel was the golden one, smart, social, radiant in every room. She was marrying Ethan Caldwell, the local pharmacist's son, and it was going to be the event of the year. My parents had the invitations printed before they even had the cake flavor chosen. And then, suddenly, I was the one who destroyed everything. What they told people was this. I introduced my friend Jessie to Ethan, and the two of them started an affair. What they told me, that I'd embarrassed the family, that I was jealous, that I was trying to sabotage Rachel's happiness. I stood in the living room with a suitcase already packed for me. My father didn't look up from his coffee mug. My mother said, "You brought this on yourself." I hadn't spoken to any of them in 7 years, until last month when a voicemail from Jessie changed everything. The last words my mother said to me were, "You should be grateful we're not telling the neighbors what you did." Then she handed me an envelope with $200 in cash and a folded list of local hostels. I remember the way she avoided my eyes like I was a stain she couldn't scrub off her version of family. No one asked me what happened. Not Rachel, not Ethan, not even my father, who used to drive me to school with a thermos of black coffee and call me his quiet shadow. I guess even shadows can outshine the wrong person if they're standing too close. Jessie tried to defend herself at first. She told me she had only met Ethan twice, once at that backyard barbecue, and once when she picked up her forgotten sunglasses. But Rachel had already spread her version like gospel. Jessie was called a homewrecker. I was branded the enabler. Within days, I was locked out of group chats, blocked from family emails, erased from the wedding website. My name was pulled off the printed program. They even cropped me out of a family photo on Facebook. It wasn't loud what they did. It was clinical, like closing a browser tab and forgetting it ever existed. I stayed with my college roommate in Detroit for 2 weeks, slept on her pull-out couch with my coat still zipped up. I kept thinking someone would call my aunt maybe, or Rachel herself, even if just to scream. No one did. I got a job at a bookstore on 9 Mile, worked double shifts, saved every tip. I didn't tell anyone what happened. When people asked about my family, I smiled and said, "We're not that close." But that was a lie. We had been close. Until closeness became inconvenient. Years passed. I finished grad school, moved to Chicago, got my counseling license. Specialized in family trauma, though I never said why. My name went on certificates, podcast intros, conference panels, but not on Christmas cards, not on baby announcements, not on anything with the word Monroe in the return address. I didn't go to Rachel's baby shower. I wasn't invited to her divorce party either. Yes, that's a thing now. I watched it all from the outside like a ghost with good Wi-Fi. I told myself it didn't matter anymore. I told myself I'd built a life of my own. But sometimes late at night, lying awake in my tiny apartment, I'd remember the way Rachel once held my hand during thunderstorms, or how she used to braid my hair before picture day. I'd wonder if any part of her remembered that too. Then one day, I opened my voicemail. It was from Jessie, and her voice shook when she said, "Claire, I kept something. I think you need to hear it." When Jessie's voicemail landed in my inbox, I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for 3 days, just her name and that little speaker icon. I told myself it wasn't worth digging up old bones. I had a steady job, a quiet apartment, a coffee mug with my initials on it, and a cat named Baxter who liked to sleep on my chest like I was a pillow with a heartbeat. I didn't need answers. But of course, that wasn't true. The night I finally pressed play, I sat on my kitchen floor, back against the fridge, knees pulled to my chest. The recording was short, less than 3 minutes, but it cracked open something I'd been sealing shut for years. It was Ethan's voice, not drunk, not angry, just tired. "She found the texts," he said. "Not even anything bad, just flirty. And from someone else, not Jessie." But Rachel flipped. Told me if I left her, she'd make me look like the cheater. Said she'd pin it on someone close. She picked Claire because her words, not mine. "People already think she's jealous." He paused. I didn't stop her. I should have. But by then it was easier to let the lie grow. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there listening to the fridge hum and the cat snore, and I let the weight of it settle on me like ash. All those years, all those holidays, all those family photos with me carefully removed as if I had died young and was best not mentioned. And now one voicemail had turned the whole thing inside out. I should have been angry, should have plotted some perfect confrontation, imagined Rachel's face crumbling in public. But instead, I made a cup of tea and stood by the window watching the streetlights flicker. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And I wanted it in a way they couldn't spin, couldn't bury under another family story about how Claire always had a flair for the dramatic. The next morning, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out something I hadn't touched in years. A small silver tape recorder. My dad gave it to me when I was 15, said it was for capturing ideas. I used it once to record Rachel singing along to a cassette in the car, her voice off-key and beautiful. I smiled at the memory. Then, I slipped the voicemail file onto a flash drive. Labeled it the version that matters. That week I didn't sleep much. I re-listened to the recording. I wrote a letter I never sent. I even thought about calling my mother not to reconnect just to hear how she'd sound if she heard the truth. But I didn't call. Instead, I circled a date on my calendar. A date I hadn't planned on caring about. Rachel's second baby shower. At the house I was once told never to come back to. The baby shower was on a Saturday, mid-April. The invitation never came, of course, but Rachel posted about it anyway. A pastel photo of a cake shaped like a cradle. Balloons in soft pink. Dozens of comments from high school friends and women who now call themselves boy moms or girl moms on Instagram. And the location, my parents' house. The same living room where they told me I was no longer welcome. The same dining table where Rachel once spilled lemonade on my college acceptance letter and didn't apologize. I hadn't been back in 7 years. That morning I dressed plainly. Black slacks, soft sweater hair down, no makeup. I didn't want to make a scene. I just wanted to hand them something. On the drive over, I kept my hands at 10 and 2 the way Dad taught me. I passed the gas station where he used to buy me Slurpees after dentist appointments. The library where Mom made me get my first library card. The streets hadn't changed. I had. When I pulled up, the driveway was full. SUVs, minivans, one Tesla. I parked down the street, walked slowly. My heels clicked against the concrete, steady, not rushed. I carried a gift bag. Inside, a small, stuffed elephant soft gray fleece, and a flash drive tucked beneath the tissue paper. Label the version that matters. Rachel opened the door herself. She blinked twice, smiled the way women do when they're afraid someone might ask the wrong question. "Claire," she said, tilting her head. "Wow, this is unexpected." "Hi," I replied. "I just wanted to drop something off." Her eyes flicked to the gift bag. "You didn't have to, but—" "Thank you." The hallway smelled like cinnamon and soap. Laughter bubbled from the kitchen. I caught a glimpse of my mother arranging finger sandwiches. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to. I handed Rachel the bag. "You can open it later," I said. "It's not really for the baby." Rachel's smile flickered. "Okay." I turned to go. "Claire," she called after me. "You're not staying." I looked at her. Really looked. She still had that soft, polished look, like someone who lives her life with a filter over it. But there was something under her eyes. A flicker of calculation. Or fear. "No," I said. "I already stayed longer than I should have." And then I left. I didn't wait to see her reaction, didn't linger to hear the audio play or watch the mask slip. That wasn't the point. The point was, for the first time in years, I wasn't the secret. I was the storm on the edge of their blue sky, and they had no umbrella. I didn't expect a reaction right away. People like Rachel don't break in front of others. They fracture quietly out of frame behind closed doors when no one is watching. But I knew the moment she'd open the gift. She'd pull out the soft gray elephant first, maybe even smile. Maybe even say something about how I always gave thoughtful presents, as if we were still the kind of sisters who traded Christmas socks and inside jokes. Then she'd see the flash drive. Then the label, the version that matters. She'd freeze, or pretend not to. But her hands would tremble because even lies well rehearsed can't compete with a voice recorded in real time. Ethan's voice. It was unmistakable, not dramatic, not angry, just tired. Heavy with the weight of years he let someone else carry the blame. Rachel said if I left her she'd make it messy, told me she'd pin it on someone close, said you were already quiet, already overlooked, that people would believe her. He'd paused then, and the pause said more than the words. I didn't stop her. I should have. But I didn't. The whole file was under 3 minutes, short enough to fit inside a memory, long enough to change one. I didn't stay to see how she handled it. I didn't want to. What mattered to me wasn't her expression. It wasn't whether my mother rushed to her side or whether the baby shower guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. What mattered was that for once Rachel didn't control the narrative. That truth had entered the house before it could be escorted back out. Later that night, I got a text from my Aunt Ruth. She's never picked sides. That's her thing, staying neutral, staying polite. "Claire, I don't know what happened, but things got tense. Are you okay?" I typed a reply, then deleted it. What could I possibly say in a text that hadn't already been said on tape? The next morning, another message lit up my phone. This one from my father. "We need to talk. I think we've misunderstood too much for too long." There was no apology. No, we were wrong. Just that tightrope phrase that families like mine walk when they can't bear to name what they've done. I stared at the screen. Then I opened my desk drawer. Inside, I kept a printed transcript of the recording. It was clean, simple, and dated. I folded it into an envelope, wrote my name across the front in his handwriting. No return address. No note. No explanation. And I mailed it back to him, because I didn't bring flowers. I brought the truth, and the truth doesn't need closure, it just needs to exist. The first call came that Sunday night. Blocked number. No voicemail. Just silence on the other end. The kind that sounds familiar, not empty, but loaded. Like someone was there holding their breath, hoping you'd speak first. I didn't. Monday morning, my inbox had 3 unread messages, all from names I hadn't seen in years. The first was from my mother, Claire. I don't know what this was meant to do, but if you think humiliating your sister in front of her friends was the way to heal old wounds, well, I'm deeply disappointed. No mention of the recording. No mention of the lie. Just a continuation of the same script I'd grown up hearing. You're overreacting. You're making things worse. You don't know when to stop. The second was from Rachel herself. You took something personal and twisted it. That recording was taken out of context. You blindsided me, Claire, at my baby shower. I stared at that line for a long time. My baby shower. Like that moment, the gathering, the cupcakes, the curated perfection was the thing that mattered most. Not the years I'd lost, not the reputation I'd had to bury, but the disruption of her event. The third email was from Ethan. His was short. I heard it played. I should have said something a long time ago. I'm sorry. No excuses, no defense. Just a single line I hadn't known I needed. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was above it. Not because I wasn't tempted. But because silence this time wasn't powerlessness. It was control. For years, my silence had been used against me, proof that I was guilty, that I had something to hide. But now it served a different purpose. I wasn't erasing anyone. I just wasn't letting them re-edit me again. They tried in small ways, mutual friends reaching out secondhand invitations, a tag in an old photo with a comment that read, "Miss you, sis." But I wasn't going back. Not to the table where my seat had been pulled out. Not to the story that had never made room for my version. One afternoon, I walked into the studio where I recorded my podcast. I sat in front of the mic, let the quiet settle. And then slowly I said, "Sometimes the truth doesn't fix things. Sometimes it just stops the bleeding." That episode aired the next morning. I never mentioned names, never referenced my family, but they knew. And more importantly, I knew. That was the turning point. Not the flash drive, not the transcript, not even the voicemail. It was the moment I stopped needing them to hear me. Because the story, the real one, was finally mine to keep. And I had already said enough. I didn't hear the full story until weeks later. And even then, it came in pieces, half-whispers, reluctant confessions from people who didn't know they were filling in blanks I no longer needed filled. The flash drive had done what I expected. It didn't explode the house. It cracked the windows. Apparently, Rachel left the baby shower early. Claimed she wasn't feeling well. My mother tried to smooth it over, told the guests it was just hormones and stress. One neighbor said Rachel looked pale in a way she'd never seen before. No one mentioned me. Not by name. But after that day, I noticed things shifting. The family group photo disappeared from my parents' Facebook profile. A distant cousin sent me a friend request. Someone from Rachel's college sorority liked an old post of mine, a quote about forgiveness I'd shared 3 years ago, back when I was still hoping someone would offer it first. And then nothing. Just quiet. The kind of quiet you learn to live with. The kind that doesn't echo anymore. I kept working. Kept recording my episodes. Kept doing the slow daily labor of building a life with no scaffolding left from the one I was born into. Some nights I'd sit on my balcony with a mug of tea and wonder what Rachel told herself now. Whether she convinced herself it was all exaggerated, that Ethan had misunderstood, that I was vindictive, that trauma distorts memory. People like her always need a narrative that makes them the victim, but I wasn't waiting for her version anymore. The truth didn't come with fireworks. It didn't clear the sky. It just gave me ground to stand on, steady, simple mine. And no one could take that from me again. One morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside was a single photo. Me and Rachel. We were 12 and 19, sitting on a porch swing. She was braiding my hair. I was laughing. On the back, one line written in pencil. "I don't know when things broke." That was it. Not sorry, not I was wrong, just that. I didn't cry, didn't text, didn't send a letter back. Instead, I placed the photo in a drawer with the transcript, the original recording, and my father's old letter, the one asking me to come home. I closed the drawer gently, then stood in the quiet of my apartment sunlight crawling across the floor like forgiveness that had nowhere to land. I hadn't returned to burn bridges or rebuild them. I just came to put my name back where it belonged, and now that I had, I could finally walk forward. Not away, not back, just forward. No apology, no reunion, no audience, just the sound of my own steps uninterrupted. I didn't check my credit card that often. I had alerts set up, and most of my purchases were routine groceries bills, the occasional overpriced coffee when work ran late. But that Monday morning, as I stood in my kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil, I opened the app out of habit. There it was. 4 transactions, all posted over the weekend. 4 Seasons Maui, $6,380 Hawaiian Airlines, $3,920 Island Helicopter Tours, $2,100 Luxury Luau Experience, $2,840 total, $15,240, 72. For a second, I thought I had been hacked. The numbers didn't feel real, like Monopoly money. My hands hovered above the counter, the kettle still whistling behind me. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. She didn't start with a hello, just her usual cheerful urgency. Rach, isn't it exciting? Chloe's graduation trip is finally happening. Can you believe it? Hawaii? She's been dreaming of it for years. I didn't speak. Oh, and thank you for letting us use your card. We'll pay you back soon. We just needed the miles for the upgrades. You've got such a good credit score. That was the moment. Not the charges, not even the dollar amount. It was the way she said it. Light, like asking to borrow an umbrella. She didn't ask. She never had to. I was the daughter who didn't say no. I cleared my throat. You used my card without asking. A pause. Just enough to know she wasn't expecting the question. Rachel, don't be dramatic. We raised you. You've been blessed, and Chloe, well, she deserves something special after working so hard. That's the thing. My mother always wrapped entitlement in silk. She never screamed. She never called names. Just used that warm, reasonable tone that made you feel ashamed for questioning her. And I'd spent most of my life mistaking that for love. The kettle clicked off. I stared at the 4 digits glowing on my phone screen, wondering how many times I'd let things slide before this. How many small betrayals I'd folded into politeness. How many times I'd smiled through being erased. And somewhere between the island helicopter tour and the luau, I realized something. This wasn't about money. It was about what I'd been taught to accept. And maybe for once, I wasn't going to. It wasn't the first time something had been taken without asking. It started small. Or maybe I just told myself it was small. When I was 13, I got accepted into a summer program for gifted students, math of all things. I was quiet bookish, and my teachers thought I could use the challenge. I remember printing out the acceptance letter and placing it on the kitchen counter like it was a trophy. No one said anything. That same week, Chloe made the dance team at her middle school. There were cupcakes, balloons. My mother cried tears of joy. I clapped. I smiled. I stayed out of the pictures. I learned early that Chloe's wins were family wins. Mine were quiet things, private things, best kept to myself. I told myself it wasn't favoritism, that Chloe was just younger, softer, more in need of celebration. I had always been the easy one, self-motivated, low maintenance. That was the phrase my dad used once, low maintenance, like a dependable car that never broke down. And dependable things, people don't throw parties for them. By 17, I was working 2 part-time jobs to save for college. My parents said they'd help if they could, but Chloe's ballet academy was expensive and, well, she had potential. They said it with a kind of reverence, like she was on the verge of something spectacular, if only we all chipped in. I let them reallocate my college fund. I said it was fine. I meant it when I said it. And maybe that was the real betrayal, how easily I'd let it happen. Chloe was always sweet to me. That's the part no one understands. She wasn't cruel. She didn't gloat. She just expected things. She had grown up in a world where things showed up for her like magic. Clothes in her size, a new iPhone when hers cracked, someone else's credit card booking the spring break hotel. She was the kind of girl life handed umbrellas to before the storm even started. And I carried my own rain. By the time I graduated college debt-free, thanks to scholarships and a side job at the library, I didn't even tell my parents about the ceremony. I knew they wouldn't come. Chloe had a regional dance competition that weekend. Years later, sitting in my apartment, a glass of lukewarm wine in hand, and $15,000 missing from my credit limit, I realized I had never actually confronted any of it. Not the erased college fund, not the birthdays where Chloe's name was on the cake, not the phone calls that always began with "can you help" and never ended with "thank you." I had been quiet for so long I'd mistaken the silence for peace. But now that silence had a balance due, and this time I wasn't paying. I called her that night, not because I wanted to fight, because I needed to understand. The line rang 4 times before she picked up her voice, already smiling. "Sweetheart, I was just telling your father we should send Chloe a spa voucher for after the trip. Her skin gets so sensitive in the sun." I skipped the small talk. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the credit card." A pause. I could almost hear her rearranging her voice into something softer, more maternal. "Rachel, honey, this again. You used it without asking me. Technically, we've had access to that card since your father's surgery. You said we could use it for emergencies. This wasn't an emergency. It was important." Her tone tightened. She wasn't angry, not yet. Just sharpening the knife. "Your sister graduated with honors. She's worked hard. This was her moment. And you thought it was okay to charge $15,000 to my name." She exhaled as if I were a stubborn child refusing medicine. "You always do this. Do what? Turn everything into a transaction. Money, money, money. That's all you ever think about." That landed like a slap. Me, the one who gave up her college fund. One who paid for her own education, her own car, her own everything. The one who never asked for anything back. You didn't even tell me I said quieter now. You didn't think I deserved to know, because I knew you'd make it a problem. Rachel, you've always had this edge, always so cold, so withholding. I didn't want to ruin the moment. There it was. I ruined things. That was the role I played. I sat down, the phone warm against my cheek. "You said you'd pay me back." "Of course we will," she said quickly. "But not right this second. You know your father's pension doesn't stretch like it used to. And you, well, you're doing so well. You've got your little job in that apartment of yours. No husband, no kids, no real expenses. No real expenses. As if my life didn't count unless I had someone else depending on me." I felt something crack in my throat. I swallowed it. "You think that means you can take from me? I think it means you should be happy for your sister." There it was again. The reframing, the rewrite, the guilt gift-wrapped. "She's always been so generous with you. You know," she continued, "when you missed her birthday last year, she told everyone it was because you were working so hard. She defended you. I didn't even know I was invited." "Well, that's your problem, Rachel. You always expect people to chase you. You isolate. You pull away. And when we try to include you, yes, maybe in ways that aren't perfect, you lash out." It was so smooth, so practiced. I almost believed her. Almost. But I was tired of swallowing blame just because it was served in a sweet voice. "I'm going to the bank tomorrow," I said flatly. "Rachel, I didn't authorize those charges, and I'm not carrying them. Sweetheart. Good night, Mom." I hung up, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after someone slams a door and you finally hear how heavy it really was. The next morning, I called the bank. I had rehearsed the script in my head, calm, factual, reasonable. A professional woman disputing unauthorized charges. I imagined the voice on the other end saying things like, "We'll get right on that," or "We understand completely." Instead, I got put on hold, then transferred. Then told gently but firmly that because my parents had been listed as emergency users on the account years ago, technically it wasn't considered fraud. "You granted them access," the woman said. "Even if it was for a limited purpose, we can't prove misuse without written restrictions." She sounded sorry, but that kind of sorry didn't fix anything. I thanked her anyway. That's what I do. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. There's a certain kind of quiet that settles when you realize no one is coming to fix this. Not the bank, not the law, not your family. Just you. Alone. I opened my laptop, typed unauthorized family credit card use. The first few results were legal blogs. The rest were Reddit threads, stories from people like me. People who said yes once and watched it turn into a lifetime of obligation. People who lent and then were told it was a gift. People who were always expected to say yes and punished the moment they didn't. The same day, Chloe posted a photo on Instagram. Her in a floral sundress on a beach holding a coconut drink and beaming under the caption, "Dreams do come true." She didn't tag me. Of course not, but I knew the smile. That easy, effortless smile that came from never having to think about where the money came from. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was angry, because I couldn't remember the last time I looked that happy. A few hours later, I got a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, everything okay with you and your mom? Heard there was drama." I didn't reply. Then came a message from my Aunt Linda, said you're upset about the trip, that you felt excluded. It's sad. You've always been so distant. There it was again. That word. Distant. Not hurt, not disrespected, just distant. Cold. Hard to love. Funny how people always interpret boundaries as walls you built out of malice, never out of self-preservation. I scrolled back to Chloe's post. Hundreds of likes. Comments from family friends, people from church. "You deserve it, girl. Your parents are amazing. So proud of you." I imagined what they'd say if I told them the truth. That she didn't pay for a single thing. That I was the one who funded the coconut drink, the beachfront suite, the rainbow lei around her neck. But I already knew the answer. They'd say I was bitter, jealous, ungrateful. Because in families like mine, silence is the currency of peace. And speaking up, that makes you the problem. So I closed the app and opened a blank document. I didn't plan to post anything. I wasn't the type. I'd always hated oversharing. Watching other people put their pain out for the world to dissect like it was entertainment made me uncomfortable. I told myself I was better than that, more private, more composed. But it wasn't about me anymore. It was about how quickly the truth disappeared the moment someone told a prettier story. By Friday, I had received 6 texts from extended family. A voicemail from a former babysitter I hadn't spoken to in a decade. Even my old piano teacher reached out on Facebook commenting under a picture I hadn't updated in years. "Hope you're not taking things too personally. Your mom always means well." That was the final nudge, not the theft. Not the silence. Not even Chloe's new reel dancing barefoot on the beach with ukulele music in the background. It was the condescension, the way everyone assumed I was the one overreacting, as if generosity had been offered and I'd thrown it back. So I wrote. Not for revenge, not even to be understood. I wrote because I was tired of pretending it hadn't happened. It took me 3 hours. Not because the story was hard to tell, but because I had to decide which parts to include and which parts to let go. I kept it short. No accusations, just the facts. A few weeks ago, my parents used my credit card to fund a $15,000 graduation trip to Hawaii for my younger sister. They did not ask me. They did not inform me. When I confronted them, I was told I was being selfish and dramatic. I was also told that because I am single, child-free, and financially stable, my resources should be considered communal. I included the screenshots, the charges, a portion of the voicemail from my mom. I ended it with a line I hadn't planned but didn't delete. Silence keeps families functioning. It also keeps injustice invisible. I hit post. Then I turned off my phone and took a walk. It was a gray afternoon, the kind of sky that looked like it had forgotten how to rain. I walked past couples pushing strollers, dogs pulling their owners toward invisible smells, teenagers clicking past on skateboards. No one looked at me. No one knew that somewhere online, a quiet woman had just stopped being quiet. When I got home, the notifications had started. Some supportive, some accusatory. Some from strangers who saw their own stories in mine and wrote messages that began with, "I thought I was the only one." But the one that made me pause came from my Aunt Naomi, my mother's younger sister. The kind of woman who wore oversized jewelry and said whatever she wanted, but never without purpose. Her message was short. "You're brave, and not wrong. She did this to me once too. Call me when you can." We hadn't spoken in years. Last I'd heard, they'd had a falling out over money. I had never asked the details, just assumed it was a misunderstanding. Now I knew better. We spoke that night. She didn't bother with small talk. Just dove in. She borrowed 10 grand from me back in 2009. Said it was for your dad's back surgery. I found out later she used it to redecorate Chloe's room. When I asked for it back, she said I was obsessed with money and told the family I was unstable. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened. And when we hung up, I called the bank again this time, not as a confused daughter, but as someone armed with context documentation and legal advice. They reopened the case. The investigation took 10 days. By the end of it, the charges were reversed. I received a formal apology from the bank, a letter explaining their revised stance, and a warning that any future shared access on that account would be permanently disabled. The money was back. The trust was not. At dinner that weekend, I ate alone. A quiet meal in my small apartment with the window cracked open and the smell of someone else's takeout drifting in. I poured a glass of wine, not to celebrate, but to acknowledge something simple. It was over. Not the pain, not the history, but the part of me that had always waited for them to make it right. That part had been returned to sender. They didn't call right away. Not after the post. Not after the charges were reversed. Not when Chloe's trip was cut short because the card had been flagged and the hotel demanded a different payment method. But 2 weeks later, my phone rang on a Sunday morning. Unknown number. California area code. I didn't answer. A voicemail followed. It was my mother. Her voice was measured. Flat, almost. We're concerned. This isn't how family handles things. You've embarrassed us. You've humiliated your sister. You've turned private matters into public drama. I hope you're proud of yourself. There was no apology. Only shame. Not theirs, mine. Chloe texted later that day. I didn't know they used your card. I swear. I thought it was part of the gift. I wouldn't have gone if I knew. Then a second message. But you didn't have to post it like that. You made everything so ugly. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't anger I felt. It was clarity. The kind that comes after months of clouded vision. After years of trying to earn a kind of love that only existed when I was useful. I didn't respond. Not to Chloe. Not to my mother. Not to anyone who only called when the image cracked. A few days later, I walked past a store window and caught my reflection, just for a second, just long enough to recognize the woman standing there. She looked calm, not triumphant, not broken, just real. For years, I had accepted a version of myself told through other people's voices. Too cold, too distant, too ungrateful, too much. But the silence I had kept wasn't peace. It was permission, and I wasn't giving it anymore. So I did the quiet thing, the irreversible thing. I changed my number. I closed the shared bank accounts. I removed them from my emergency contacts. I booked a weekend trip alone to a cabin in the mountains with no cell signal and too many stars overhead. And when I came back, I didn't check for messages. There were some, I'm sure. Voicemails I'll never listen to. Stories I'll never get to correct. That's the price of letting go. But I've made peace with it. Because sometimes the greatest act of love isn't staying. It's stepping away so the version of you they invented can finally die. And the version that survived, she gets to live. Not loudly, not to prove a point, but fully, quietly, and without permission. I didn't disappear. They just stopped seeing me. And now that I've stopped waiting, I finally see myself.